Hi, I'm Jill McKenzie, and I just wanted to share a fun experience that happened to me on the way traveling here. On the second day, I was driving, and so it took 3 days to get here. And on the second day, I always like to see, I have a hybrid, I like to see how many miles I can get, but I was bucking 45 to 50 mile an hour winds, especially across Kansas. And my tank went down almost 75 to 100 just because of the winds with my hybrid. And so I thought, well, I'm down to 50 miles, and I'm not sure when the next gas station is going to happen. So I happen to be driving, in the middle of Kansas, middle of nowhere, and I see Wilson, and I'm like, ooh. So I looked in Google, gas, is there any gas? Yes, there is. But it was about 2 to 3 miles off the freeway, and I thought, why not? I got 50 some odd miles, so I might as well, go off and see. So as I was driving off, the first thing I saw was this huge truck with round hay bales. My first thought was, man, I really want to take these hay bales back to my horses. This would be great. I wonder if I could convince this guy, because round hay bales are, anyway.
Yeah.
So the next thought is I saw the successful 4-H winners welcome you to Wilson. And I thought, this is a great farming community. I love this. And then as I got in even further, I saw this huge egg underneath this roof. And I thought, what? I couldn't believe that. And it was painted like a European Czech egg, Czechoslovakian. And then I got really interested. So as I got in further in town, I looked at there's usually in the smaller town, there's always a main street of some kind, right? And you can tell about the town with the main street and how the stores are or the building architecture. And when I looked at it, I thought, this building architecture is amazing. It looks European, it looks fine, like it will stand the test of time, especially the winds I was facing. It really was beautiful. And as I went in, each building was even better. So I stopped, there was one gas station in town, this little small, rinky-dinky, whatever it is. And I went inside and purchased my gas, filled up the car, and I just thought, can you tell me the history of your town? Tell me the history. I like to ask, the locals if there's not a big line or anything. And she said, yeah, I'd love to tell. She goes, in 1789, some Czechoslovakians came. And I was thinking, wow, 1789, thinking North Carolina, 1629 was when the first people came, so it was really soon after. They came all the way into Kansas and established a farming, ranching community. And they had to learn, and I was just imagining the loneliness of the prairie and the wind, and was there any trees out there, did they use, just trying to imagine what it would be like to come out there. And to me, I'm like, these people have grit. They even brought their culture with them and their food. And she was telling me just a little bit more about the area, like the buildings across the way, and so I learned all about the architecture, but I'll just move on. So my interest was piqued, and then I said, tell me about the history of town. What are some of the things that you do here? She says, we have a festival, we have ghost tours, and I was like, ooh, tell me about that. Do you have a hotel here? And she said, yes, we do. It's right across the railroad tracks on the other side. And I'm like, no, my interest is really piqued. I'm going to stay the night here because it was late enough in the day. So I went over to the hotel, and I was asking, when I walked in, it was amazing. The architecture, the workmanship, it was all oak wood, just thick. The corners of the rooms, had the oak little, the panels met, and then it had just the lining. The staircase was amazing. And I stayed there, it was great. The price was very reasonable. They had a restaurant downstairs, and I thought, I'm gonna eat dinner here. I went down, it opened up at 5, and by 5:30, every table was filled. So that told me that it was an excellent restaurant. And so for dinner, I just had like a lobster bisque, a wonderful salad, and I said to the barista, surprise me with a virgin drink. She did. It was a wonderful, citrusy, whatever, I don't know what she put in it. And then here's the final that was excellent. Have any of you ever tasted a Texas sheet cake? It's where you just make a homemade chocolate, I'm from the West. It's where you make a homemade chocolate cake and then cook it in a cookie sheet. So it's about this, like an inch thick. And it's really good, but what kills it is the homemade chocolate frosting on top of it. It's amazing. And I had that for dessert, and I'm like, okay, Wilson is amazing. I'm gonna stop by here again because the cake was phenomenal. The rooms were small, and the owner of the hotel said, well, I just wanted to let you know that the sheriff was killed here, and so the sheriff walks the walls at night. And I'm like, holy cow, this is gonna be great! What else? She said, well, there's a white lady, there's a white lady all around the world, and I thought, good, where's the room? Do I get that room? Anyway, it was fun, and needless to say, my evening was very pleasant. Didn't have any ghosts, no creaking, but it was an amazing hotel, super classy, super great, in the middle of nowhere, and I wouldn't have found it if I wasn't bucking winds. And so I just think it's wonderful that whenever you're traveling, go off the beaten path. Find some cool things, because your experience will be awesome. That's it. No.
My best side is hydrated. We're working on it. All right, I am ready. Great. So my name is Bridget Rohan Kelly, and I am a storyteller and a writer, and I like to joke that I'm the first act of many different romance novels. We haven't gotten to the later half, we're at the beginning. And I went viral for dating a Scotsman who flew across the world for a first date with me.
Exciting.
Yeah, it was very exciting. I had an on-again, off-again relationship with a guy who finally was like, you know what, I'm not doing this. And I was like, good, I'm done with you anyway. He's like, you need to do something for you. And I was like, that was really weirdly affirming, but okay, I'm gonna date a Scotsman. And so I get on something called Tinder Passport, where you pay like $5, and you could set your pin anywhere in the world. And I was like, it's gonna be Scotland! And so I set my pin in Falkirk, Scotland, which is very close to Alloa, Scotland. And I immediately matched, like in the first day, with a guy named Patrick. And Patrick was very attractive, very attractive. Dark hair, tatted everywhere, like the ideal, like lean footballer haircut, the ideal, what you would picture for a romance novel. And so I was like, all right, whatever, it's fine. And so we chatted, and he was so sweet, and it was very fun, and back and forth and back and forth. And then a friend of mine was getting married, and she asked me to help, I want to say curate her wedding, but really it was manage her wedding. Because I also work in bridal sales, and I said, yes, I'll do this for you. But I was talking to this guy enough, and he was like, oh, I'd love to visit America. And I was like, do you really want to visit America? Because I'm invited to a wedding, and you can come as my date. And by this time, we'd been chatting for, I want to say, 2 months. And he goes, I do want to do that. And immediately applied for a passport, applied for, because he didn't have one, applied for a visa. Coincidentally, his mother was born in America, so it was surprisingly easy for him. And everything was set up, and he flew across the world to meet me. What's funny is this would have just been a cool little story if I hadn't set up my camera on my dashboard when I picked him up from the airport. And I got this amazing little video of me saying, welcome to America! And he comes and gives me a huge hug. And I post it on TikTok. And it goes viral overnight. Wow. Because I also posted follow-up videos where I took him to a steakhouse, and then we walked around Millennium Park in Chicago and just enjoyed our time. And he was having a blast. And you've seen nothing like a Scotsman seeing skyscrapers for the first time. It's incredible. I was like, it's not that big.
Well, they're big.
Yeah, big for him. And it was a fabulous time. He spent a week and a half, 2 weeks with me, and we visited all these different places. He fell in love with American barbecue, and I was like, we're in Wisconsin. This isn't even that good. Yeah. Curb your expectations. We gotta go down. How about we go to Kansas City? Well, then we'll talk. But then after I sent him home, and he had such a blast. And everyone loved him because, of course, everybody loves a Scot. I went to visit him in Scotland as well. And little did I know, I was viral there too, because he was Scotland's own son who gained worldwide notoriety. And this was also right on the banks of some tragedies that were happening in the Ukraine. And so people were thirsty for happy things. And now you're seeing two people taking a chance and falling in love across the world. And the relationship didn't work out. We were just two different people, but we are best friends. And I'm writing a book about it. A little bit fictionalized. But he is my biggest supporter in that, and he's like, I want to read it, I want to send it to my friends, and I was like, well, we have to finish it, so you can't. But that's my story.
That's awesome.
Love it.
Yeah, what a fun story.
I'm Marcia Kaufman, and my daughter is Chinese.
Oh.
Yes, no, my husband is not Asian. That's what a lot of people think when I'm at the grocery store raising her, is that, oh, she has a Chinese husband. No. No, we adopted my daughter from China. It would be over 20 years ago now, because she's turning 21 this spring, and we went over to Guangzhou, and we adopted her. But the story that I want to tell you is the little vacation that Bill and I decided to take before we adopted her. Because we're travelers by nature for grad school. My gift to myself was a trip around the world, and that's another story for another time. But when we decided to adopt her from China, we thought, well, our son, who is going to be home with grandparents, we've not had a time away from him, so let's take this opportunity to go somewhere in China, just the two of us, for 3 days, just the two of us. And so we decided on a place in China called Guilin. Now, Guilin is a town of about 1 million people. Okay, it has one stoplight, at least at the time when we were there. The population, I'm sure, is so much bigger. Because it's the place where it's on their money, their main money is a picture of, not the president, but of this karst topography. And so what karst topography is a limestone that has been carved away by the rain. And you have this up and down on the terrain, but then deep down inside each one of these up and downs is a cave, a cavern. And so we thought, oh, let's go there, it's on their money, I would really like to see this. And so we booked it with the travel company that we went through to get our airplane tickets to go through the adoption process. And it's Louis Adoption Travel, basically. So they're known. They still do tours to this day, and I would still go travel with them, even though I have a story that might convince you not to go through them. So we get on the airplane from Phoenix and we fly to LAX. We have a 12-hour layover in LAX for this flight over to Guangzhou. It was a very long trip overseas, over the ocean. And then we immediately had 2 hours to get to our next flight that goes to Guilin. And it was a small plane because it's a small place in China that we were traveling to. We get on this plane, we end up in the airport, and nobody speaks English. But that's okay, we've traveled before, not a problem. Except for nobody was waiting there with the sign with our name on it, like everybody else was. So you get out of the security area, and everybody was getting picked up, and we were waiting for our guide that we had hired in advance to then take us in a car to the hotel that we had reserved, and then go on the excursions and so forth. So there was nobody there. But we're like, oh, maybe they're late. We'll just wait. And everybody deboarded the plane. Everybody was gone from the area. We're like, well, let's go down and get our suitcase, and we'll go down and see if maybe they're waiting down there by the suitcases. Nobody was there. Everybody was leaving the airport. And by now, this is a small town, and not a lot of people travel by plane in this part of China. We are the only ones left. And the money place was shutting down. There was nobody working at the airport. They weren't opening until the next morning, and this is about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And so they were trying to say, you need to leave the airport. And we don't know Chinese. They don't know English. And there was one bus that was picking people up. And there happened to be 2 Australian tourists with their backpacks that loaded in. Nobody else spoke English. And they said, well, if you don't get on this bus, you're going to be sleeping on the curb because they won't let you stay inside. So we get on this random bus that goes into the town because we had nobody to talk to. We knew no idea what to do. We had our luggage. And so it starts stopping at all these hotels. And then the Australians say, well, this is our stop, and it was a hostel. And we're like, well, this isn't where we're staying. And I had the name of the hotel in English, and I showed it to the bus driver, and he's like, doesn't know a lick. But the bus actually went to that. It's the only tourist hotel in town. Only. And it's about 14 stories high. And you could see in the city, everything else was very low. This was the only high-rise. We're like, okay, well, at least we made it to the hotel that I know we have a reservation. We get up to the counter, and they don't have a reservation for us, okay? And they don't speak English, okay? And they're like, And so, and they're like, next, in line. And we're like, okay, we're at the hotel. They don't know any English. They don't recognize our reservation. And so we go and sit on the couches in the lobby, and we didn't know what to do. Because, they didn't know what to do with us, and we didn't know what to do with them, and they didn't have our reservation. Well, lucky for us, there was one person that was working in the back that knew a little bit of English. And I showed them my reservation for the cell phone that I had ordered. Now, it was called a Panda phone. Back then, you didn't bring your telephone to China because, and maybe to this day, you just, because of security. So we rented a Panda phone, and it actually was delivered to the hotel with our names on it. And so somebody had found it in the back because we showed them the Panda phone reservation and the hotel reservation, which we did not have, but the Panda phone showed up. So then they found somebody to help us, and they got us a room. And we said, well, this is what we wanted to do. So they said, okay, we'll help you. They hired us a car. And we had the list of the things we were supposed to do. And the hotel person who spoke English arranged for this car to take us to these places. And we still got to see all of the places in Guilin in a black VIP car. Then the driver didn't know how to use defrost, and so he kept wiping it with a rag. And he didn't believe in stopping for traffic because there, in the small town of 1 million, they only had one stoplight, and everybody had to move out of the way for the black car. Because if it was a black car, it was VIP. And so he would drive right through the stoplight, even if it was red, to go through. And all these poor people on the bicycles and the rickshaws and even with the donkeys that were pulling things, they all had to quickly get out of the way of this black car, and we're just zooming right through town. We saw the caves, we saw all of the birds that go fishing with the rings around their necks, which I can't remember the name of it, but we even rode on one of those mats that was in the water for tourists' sake. We saw the water buffalo that were harvesting everything. We got back to our hotel room at night, and in true Chinese form, at least at the time, at 10 o'clock, we looked out our window, and all of the lights went out in the entire city, except for our hotel. So that was our experience, our very first experience in China, without our guide.
Oh, but it all worked out. That's a big thing.
It did.
Great story.
So in closing, I guess, even if in the worst circumstances, people are good. People are good, and people will understand, and somehow things will all work out in the end. So,
Great
there.
story.
Yeah.